Hello, Bishop for Message movie Akaba. As I be a ordinary TV in case you your first time without cho. And jam home cost like don't hesitate. Click on the subscription and then give me a thumbs up. A whole lot of cases, issues, and a coso for the my Ghana say. But there is this particular one in which for as a true since day one case way and as an issue we about one thing no matter but I can't wrap my head around it. Nina NSF His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and a former president Nana Kufuor about and a officer, a chief justice, and all the chief justice Gertrude Torkono ABC a konya so. The episode for the embassy no we all thought say because of oye MPP meeting or the embassy so. But mama no I say oye MPP ni and I saw oye NDC ni and I saw belonging to any other party. But rulings oye according to anasa Abranoti a konya kese so a chief justice for konya so no. Rulings oye nyina na episode for a court according to the law. That means one year bias or really But this time around, for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama say on penny bill. And no more and Paul Adom or really a whole lot of secrets about say. The former president and I say His Excellency John Dramani Mahama Kasego Kai 2024 so Bobby in Pebi F organizations biano no obenya kunyano after the oyas pepe no Paul Adom a whole lot of secrets about this particular one. And no kodaje AG Odame Attorney General and also about bonte abe blaste His Excellency John Dramani Mahama gidi say how? Like on Tiasi, I need to know person why day on Tiasi because in I say a woman Ghana for His Excellency John Dramani Mahama or the air Ghana for Ghana for the Omompe Chief Justice Bill. But I mean, Ghana for Kashi. So how come say I will say offer a new petition against or no? Na just say obi for example about onye she like on kasa Ghana for that and a new ruling say oye wo court ni na ebusia for a supreme. So how say also wa besisa no like e ho insembebre and a attorney general a Justice Odame so e dey ababontin and a Paul Adom so really secret bebre etikano ni nkoti masia that's
that was ruled to the bench, not just the Chief Justice, but the entire quorum that sat on the matter. Quorum just means the panel. Was ruled to the bench and hence necessitating the arrest of the petitioner for contempt of court. So here is a petitioner who is a lawyer. He had a case in court. He went to the court. He was unhappy with it. He was unhappy with the verdict. And then he started throwing tantrums in the court before all the panel. The Chief Justice was sitting before all the panel. And what do? If it's in Parliament, the Speaker is going to ask for the marshal. We know that already. The Speaker will say, where's the marshal? Hey, take him out. If I go to Parliament and I smuggle myself in the chamber while they are sitting and before they see I'm in the chamber and I say, hey, good evening, Ghana, come today. Hey, marshal, take this man out. And the marshal will come and bundle me away. If I wrestle with the marshal, he will hit me. If I hit him, the policeman will come. So that's what it is. So this petitioner then sends a petition to President Mahama that I went to court and Chief Justice said they should arrest me in the court. So President Mahama receives it and they are looking at it. And then when you check the date on which the thing occurred, and you check the date of there's a platform called the Law Platform where many lawyers are. It was reported in a law platform and completely condemned. That's where we got the information from. Completely condemned by all the lawyers. How can you do that? So he is petitioner number one. It's not very complicated to dismiss a petition like that, but we are not the Council of State and we are not the President. But from what we found, this is a no petition. In fact, the petitioner should be fined. He should be fined for bringing a petition, wasting the taxpayers' time, wasting Council of State time. But that's our verdict. We don't know what the President and the Council of State will decide. But the facts of the matter, as we check it, which we can all prove it, that on this occasion, this guy went to court and he threw tantrums before the court, and then the court said, well, sorry, we have to get you out, and they took him out. That is his allegation. Now, there's a second petition. Here, The petitioner alleges that the Chief Justice's recommendations for the appointment of more justices to the bench was unconstitutional. This ground has already been subject of other petitions, and the same ground has been dismissed. Further, a mere recommendation to the president does not usurp the president's powers to nominate members of the Supreme Court. This is a very interesting conversation, this one, because when it happened on social media, some members of the National Democratic Congress were sharing the document, and I'm not sure what the course of action is, but let's discuss it. So the allegation is that the Lord Chief Justice wrote a letter to the president in response to a conversation, a request from the president, an oral request from the president, because the letter says pursuant to our conversation, so and so and so. So the President Akufo-Addo in question here, the president had a conversation with the Chief Justice, made an oral sort of request that, can you send me some names for consideration for Supreme Court? That's what is in the document. And then the allegation here for the grounds of impeachment is that and this came in the Kweku Asare document. It was in the Kweku Asare document, and President Akufo-Addo dismissed it, but they've repeated it. So I don't know what the Council of State is going to do about that. He says that the recommendation that she has made recommendations for justices to come onto the Supreme Court and is unconstitutional. It's very difficult to assess this matter because the recommendations for the Supreme Court that the president takes, he can even take it from me. He can take it from anybody. He doesn't have to tell whoever what he's done. When the president is ready, he will take his pen with the secretary in front of him, write a list of names, and send it to the Speaker of Parliament. When the letter gets to the Speaker of Parliament, it is not part of the Speaker of Parliament's job to find out that, Mr. President, the name Paul Adom came from who? The name Paul Adom came from John Mahama. Because you, President, John Mahama is your friend. And the other day, we saw that you and John Mahama were at the Pinkberry at Hacho, near the Chicken Man. So we suspect that it's John Mahama who did this. And then they go and write a letter and say that John Mahama has made recommendation to President and that is not his job. So we are impeaching John Mahama as Chief Justice. I don't even get it. Whatever conversation the President and the Chief Justice had is inconsequential to the legal process. You cannot therefore say that the Chief Justice was making recommendations to the Supreme Court. It is the President who can complain. That's why I was asking that what is the course of action? Who is complaining? If the Chief Justice has usurped the President's authority, it's the President who is the proper complainant in the matter. He can come and say that, hey, Mr. Speaker, the Chief Justice is usurping my authority because he has sent you a list when it should be me. But I don't see the head and tail of this. The list went to the Speaker from the President's hand. Finito, end of story. Whether Judicial Council participated and they have a right to do so under the Constitution, Chief Justice is a member of that. Whether the Chief Justice in his individual capacity wrote something to the President, whether a former Supreme Court judge sitting at home observed that the President was about to make nominations, wrote something to the President, said, Mr. President, please consider A, B, C, D. Justice Pegan is still alive. He's a former Supreme Court judge. If there are opportunities for Supreme Court, he can write to President Mahama and say, Mr. President, please consider Mr. Paul Adom, Mr. Godfrey Dame, Bafuewa for Supreme Court because I think they are good judges or they are good lawyers. They are doing what, something like that. This is what they are saying, that because she wrote a letter to the President making recommendations, she should be impeached because she was doing an unconstitutional act. Who is complaining? This is the President's job. The President did his job. The President does his job by writing to the Speaker. The President did that job and wrote to the Speaker. The vetting was conducted. What is the point about this? But we are not the Council of State. The Council of State will look at it. But this is one of the petitions. Let's move on to the more detailed one. Now, this petition, we're going to take quite a bit of time to deal with it because it's from a man called Daniel Ofori. Yeah? Now, let me explain to you about Daniel Ofori so that you can get it well. In 2011, Daniel Ofori sued EcoBank to enforce the terms of a shared trade transaction between the parties. This would have compelled EcoBank to provide funds for Daniel Ofori to acquire shares in another bank. The High Court ruled in EcoBank's favor. Okay. Daniel Ofori is a very active guy at the Ghana Stock Exchange. He's one of the reasons why the stock exchange has been active. He's been there for a while. Daniel Ofori entered into a transaction with EcoBank. Sorry, we have to mention EcoBank's name, but the other bank we will not mention. And Daniel Ofori wanted a loan from EcoBank to acquire shares in another bank whose they had done, what do the bankers call it? A call-up offer. How do they call it? After the IPO and they need money and they do a call-up that thing. So they had done a call-up offer, and so Daniel Ofori, as a shareholder, wanted to maintain his shares and acquire a few more shares. So he wrote to EcoBank for a loan, and then I think they were doing the transaction when, for some reason, the Bank of Ghana decided that bank cannot do that XYZ, something like that. So in 2011, EcoBank then refused to advance Daniel Ofori the money. So Daniel Ofori sues in the High Court, saying that EcoBank has to give him the money. Okay. Now, the High Court rules against Daniel Ofori that you cannot have that. You can't have that. The case is entitled, I believe, Daniel Ofori versus EcoBank, or EcoBank versus Daniel Ofori. There's Daniel Ofori versus EcoBank, there's EcoBank, Daniel Ofori, several of them around. Okay, so this is the said Daniel Ofori. So he sued, and the High Court said, no, you can't have the money. Then he goes to Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal confirms the decision. This is in 2013. The Court of Appeal confirms the decision of the High Court and held that EcoBank was not bound to pay the sum owed to Daniel Ofori. Entered the Supreme Court in 2018. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Daniel Ofori and held that Daniel Ofori was entitled to a sum of 13.2 million Ghana cedis and 30% interest on the said sum from the date accrued from June 2008. Now, the first transaction was in 2008. The conversation about buying shares of another bank was in 2008. That was the dates, 2008 to the date of the judgment in July 2018. It's very interesting. Okay, so at this stage, Daniel Ofori has won the Supreme Court's decision. All right. At this time, Justice Torkono is not a member of the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Torkono is not a member of the Supreme Court at the time the Supreme Court made this decision. All right. Now, EcoBank discovered instances of alleged fraud in the share transfer, and hence the case should be reopened. The court rejected the application and refused a review of the decision. This is very interesting. So later on, Justice Torkono becomes a member of the bench of the Supreme Court. Now, EcoBank, in now looking at the matter, as Supreme Court says that they have lost, they need to pay Daniel Ofori so much money. They are looking at it, and their lawyers discovered that, but there's some fraud in the application, in the first High Court application. Look at the documents that he presented. Okay, so they allege fraud. Now, once you allege fraud in any matter, you can always go back to the court and say that, oh, my laws, wait. I have now observed some fraud, and they should look at it. So EcoBank applied for the Supreme Court to reopen the matter, and they failed in that application. The Supreme Court did not reopen the matter. Then the EcoBank appealed against the Supreme Court's decision not to reopen the matter. I believe it's at this stage that Torkono is now part of the court, the Supreme Court. And in the review application, I think Torkono participates in the review application. EcoBank still lose the review application, but now